What's up, sports fans? Matt and Ryan here with the DFS 5-Pack, ready to talk over a little more year-long fantasy football, as that's still what we have in front of us. I know you're over there working the LOL and the esports slates, but we're still missing the majority of our sports. However, we are getting a little golf back this weekend, so if you're looking to get your DFS fix, slide on over to Overlay Fantasy Sports and try to get your lineups in within the next 17 hours. They got the 2.5 and the $22 contest up there for PGA. We are no help as we are not golf dudes, but I know a lot of you guys are, and they got the contest up and ready to roll, son.
How long ago does it seem that we were like salivating over that huge overlay jackpot that was never taken down?
It was a long time ago, it feels like. So what was the last basketball game? Was it 1971?
Something like that, yeah.
Something that feels like that, about 49 years ago. So, yeah, it's definitely been a hot minute. So we're here to talk about Mark Andrews, tight end of the Baltimore Ravens, breakout season last year, double-digit touchdowns. Looks like he has a wide range on his ADP from what I was researching the other day. I owned him on a bunch of teams last year, and I'm not going to lie, man, I was all in on Lamar Jackson last year, but you got me looking at Mark Andrews a lot for something you had said as we were discussing him, and he was another guy I was loaded up on last year, and he paid off nicely, so I got to give you a shout out on that one.
Yeah, he looks really good in preseason. And, man, I'm not going to lie, I like him a lot going into this year, too. Like, he's obviously not – you're not going to draft him around the likes of, like, a Travis Kelce or George Kittle. But if I had to pick one guy, like, in the league that I think could, like, be on that level this year, it might be Mark Andrews.
I don't like his ADP on some places, so it is a wide range, which is one of the reasons I probably won't get him. Also, this year, it's no knock on Andrews because I'm sure he'll have himself a nice season as long as he's healthy. I'm more just thinking there's a lot of value late in the tight ends this year, so I'm probably going to take the wait-and-see approach on this one.
I get that. I don't think that that's a bad strategy at all. Would you be shocked if he's the number one tight end in fantasy this year?
No. I mean, I would still bet on like Kelce
For
or
sure.
somebody else, but I guess I wouldn't be flabbergasted by it. I am expecting touchdown regression, though.
I get that. I mean, how could you not?
So the other thing is I know Lamar Jackson has been challenged in the offseason to really work on throwing the deep ball was something that Coach Harbaugh was trying to hound into him to really get that working. In a sophomore year with Marquise Hollywood Brown, who could be fully healthy this year, he could easily turn it into the top weapon.
Definitely. I think the touchdown regression is big time, but I think Andrews is legit. Like, I think he is a real good weapon. I mean, I just think he's good, and he's got a quarterback that, as much as he might want and try to throw deep, that's not it. That's not his game. Andrews, throwing to Andrews, checking down, that's his game.
Oh, that and running the football, which he's pretty good at, right?
For sure.
All right, guys, subscribe to the station, hit the bell for notifications. Thumbs up is always appreciated. As far as the Ravens go, we got Coach John Harbaugh here. He's been here forever. We got the second year of offensive coordinator Greg Roman. No real injury concerns I have with Mark Andrews, so nothing really to talk about here.
Nah, nothing at all here. I mean, the Ravens are going to be good. It's just a matter of how good.
Exactly. So this is third year. Tight ends are usually slow starters.
Yes.
With their rookie seasons. So even his rookie season, not bad, though. I mean, 552 yards,
Right.
only started 3 games, scored 3 times. That's a decent rookie season for a tight end. And he blew up last year. 98 targets, 64 catches, 852 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns. I think you're looking at him more as maybe 907 this year, something like that.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, obviously it's not a lock, but we've talked about this a lot with guys like Hawkinson that are slowly acclimated. It takes tight ends a little bit longer than other positions, like you mentioned. The fact that Andrews got off running and then only progressed on that last year. Now they've got rid of one of their other tight ends in Hayden Hurst. It's the Andrews show, I feel like, and we talk about this a lot in all sports. He's good. Like, he's just really good. I think he would be a really good weapon on any team. But I think that him and Lamar Jackson's a very good combination.
And again, for any of you guys who play video games, think about it when you're playing Madden online against somebody else and the quarterback scrambles to the side and you get those linebackers who are stuck in a position like, do I cover this tight end and stick with him or do I go for Lamar Jackson? It's probably a big reason why you see he's got a catch percentage in his career of 66% because it's high percentage throws. You can't cover everybody, and he ends up being open. Again, the touchdown regression should be expected. I've actually watched a couple of videos breaking down his touchdown regression, and it's really gotten into my head. That being said, there's no guarantee on that, right? Like, he is good. He's playing for a good team. He's playing for a team that's going to score points. While you should expect touchdown regression, there's no reason to think that's a guarantee. He couldn't score 12 times this year.
You talk about this. We talk about this a lot. The sample sizes are just so small, right? Like, he could have, 10 touchdowns for the next 4 years, and we'd still expect regression maybe the next year. But, like, that doesn't mean he's less. That doesn't mean, like you just said, it's guaranteed it's not going to happen. I don't know. We expect touchdown regression, but as anything else, like, it's the unknown. And maybe there's no touchdown regression. Who knows?
Okay, like, put it this way. I would bet on touchdown regression, but it's not the sure thing that Aaron Jones' touchdown regression is.
I agree.
All right, so moving along. As far as moves they made on the offense this year, the Ravens really stayed pat more than anything. You already mentioned that they traded away tight end Hayden Hurst, who was a decent number 2 guy, and they also have a decent 3 guy in Boyle, so they're still strong at tight end. Clearly, Mark Andrews is the number 1, unquestionable, right? Like, he's still a distance way ahead of Boyle, so he is the number 1 guy. But it's one less tight end in Hayden Hurst to potentially take touchdowns away from him. They drafted J.K. Dobbins and Devin Duvernay. Any thoughts on Devin Duvernay?
He's a big target outside. I'm not sure how, I'm sure he'll play this year. But again, with these, like, what was he drafted in the 3rd, 4th round?
3rd.
It's, obviously they like the guy, but I have no idea whether he's going to, like, play right away, whether they think he's a project. You know what I mean?
So you mentioned he's a big target, so he's a guy that could be utilized in the red zone. Okay. As much as I can take out of that is maybe if you had, like, Mark Andrews and whoever your next tight end is to him, it might be like the subtlest jockeying of one thing. Maybe it takes a touchdown away from him. It's basically a non-factor. J.K. Dobbins, again, it's a running back, doesn't take anything away from him. The biggest thing for me is I think Hollywood Brown has the opportunity to really emerge as like a top-tier type of weapon. But again, that's no guarantee, so that's really, only a minor mark against Mark Andrews.
Yeah, they've got a good offense. I mean, they can run the ball. They've obviously got a quarterback that can move the ball. They're going to score points. I mean, the more I'm thinking about it, like, I get your points about Hollywood Brown, and he should take a step forward this year, but he's not like a big target at all. Andrews is that guy, and I like him a lot this year. I see why you don't like the ADP and you're hesitant and you'd rather wait because there's a plethora of tight ends. But I can also, like I mentioned earlier, I could legit see him being the 3rd tight end or the number 1 tight end this year. And after Kelsey and Kittle, I can't think of one guy I'd rather have. Maybe Ertz.
Okay, so we mentioned the ADP already, and I looked up at a couple sites. This is a huge range guy. I've seen him as high as 23 and as low as 60. Like, no chance am I taking him in the 3rd round. Okay, like, that's just not going to happen. I'm not going to pay that kind of money for him. But it is one of those things that if he slid down to, like, that 60 range, well, now you're talking, right? Because now I've been able to secure a couple of running backs, a couple of wide receivers. And at that point, that's when I start, considering quarterbacks or tight ends that I would consider good value. So this is a guy that I think you need to have in the back of your mind, but you really have to, let the draft come to you is a term that you use a lot. And if Mark Andrews is there, in the 5th round, well, then I can consider him. But going and reaching for him in the 3rd round, to me, is a no-go.
Yeah, agreed, wholeheartedly. 100% agree. And that's ultimately why I like auction drafts. You don't have to make that decision.
Right. Well, you make it with the money a little bit, how much you want to bid on them, but you're right. It's not even remotely close to the same thing, which is why both you and I love the auction draft. So, again, to me, this one is all about where does he fall in your draft, because I'm not a fan of taking any tight end in the 3rd round unless it's, Gronkowski from 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, what about guys like Kelsey and Kittle? They're going higher than that.
I like those guys. They're studs. I understand why anybody likes them. I personally, with a lot of value late in the tight end this year, I don't like it from a strategic draft standpoint. I'd much rather take a running back or an elite wide receiver at that position in the draft as opposed to taking a Kittle or a Travis Kelce. Again, these guys are awesome. No knock on them in players. They're incredible. They're good at fantasy and DFS and all those things. I just don't like it from a strategic draft standpoint.
I get that. You would take them in the 3rd round, though, right?
Travis Kelce or George Kittle?
Yeah.
No, I'd probably try to get another running back just because I have tight ends I like later in the draft. Now, clearly, there are no George Kittles or Travis Kelce's, but I can't get running backs at the end of the draft I have a lot of confidence in, whereas I can get starting tight ends, later in the draft.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, no knock on Kittle and Kelsey. They're both flat out studs.
I think that both those guys are going to go in like the late second round.
Yeah, potentially. And at that point, I won't be part of that.
I get that 100%.
We've talked over baseball fantasy drafts a million times. You played a lot of points leagues, so drafting pitchers earlier is something that you considered before than I do, but I play in a lot of roto. We all have our strategies.
Drafting tight end early is not a strategy I employ that often because you're just like, unless it really falls to you. I'm with you for the most part there.
Like I take my third and fourth running backs a lot of times before I even consider a tight end because there's 30 starting tight ends and only, 12 of them, 13, 14, 15 are going to get drafted. Again, a lot of those lower tier guys are terrible. You don't want them on your team. But when it comes to running backs, there's just so much value that you get at the front end of a draft and running back. So I'm always going to go running back heavy.
And honestly, there's also like tight ends that emerge. And like if you're on it, like a guy we're talking about right now, Mark Andrews, another guy I'm thinking about last year, Darren Waller. Those two guys were much better draft picks than Kelsey and Kittle because of the value you got from them.
100%. Maybe the truest thing you've ever said to me in your entire life. I agree with you. If there was a number bigger than 100 that we could use for this one, I would go with it.
That's another guy I feel like it's slept on a little bit that I do like also is Waller.
Sure. What's not to like?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you're going to have Josh Jacobs, making plays on that offense, freeing up Darren Waller to continue to be the baller that he is. I like him too. It's another guy you can get later in the round, later in the draft that can potentially give you a lot of value. You got other guys that you can think of. I'm thinking of Gesicki from like the Dolphins. You can get way towards the end of the draft and things like that. For
sure. And as the training camps start and we watch these guys more, that's when we'll really start to be able to pick it apart.
Right. Like your Austin Hooper guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how he's going to play, but I have no reason to believe he's not a big part of the offense.
I struggle to go there for like fantasy, depending on where he's going, though, just because they got a ton of weapons and also like Njoku. Hooper will be the guy, but like Njoku's not awful at all.
No, he's not. And again, though, it's the end of the round value you can get in tight end that's just not applicable with running backs. Like to hit on a running back in round 12, it's it happens, but it's just not very likely. To hit on a tight end in round 12 is not unlikely because that's a lot of times where the second tier tight ends are going.
For sure.
So it's all about draft strategy for me, and that's where I just won't end up with Andrews again unless he's dropping to the 5th or 6th round. Now you're talking.
Yeah, exactly. 100% agreed.
If you had to pick a number for him, clearly you're not talking round 3, and clearly you would jump on him in the beginning of round 6. But where was the point you think you would consider taking him?
I really, depending on like where tight ends were going in that draft, obviously, I think I would be comfortable with it in round 5, and I don't hate it in round 4. Like
I'm with you on round 5 because I want to double up on running backs and get 2 receivers, or if it happens to work out, 3 running backs and 1 wide receiver before I would want to make a move on a tight end.
I agree. I mean, I don't hate it as like a default though, because like he's going to be good this year. It's just a matter of how good,
Sure. And, like I said, Brenton said earlier, you always talk about the draft has to fall to you. If I'm there in round 4 and I just don't like the picks there, what's available, and I take him, and then I know that the receiver that I like is much on the board, I think I can get in round 5, then I understand the risk.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. It's every draft is so different because people do crazy stuff, and that really changes. One pick off changes an entire draft, No
doubt about it, guys. Again, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you guys today. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the station if you haven't done it yet. Hit the bell for notifications, and we will see you, later on today, tomorrow, day after that, whatever it is, to talk a little more fantasy football.
Thanks, guys. Can't wait.